All right, we have lots of guests that are going to be with us today, so we're going to jump right in and get started. Good morning, Carla. Good morning, Keenan. How are you guys?
Good morning.
Yeah, we're doing great.
Excellent. So the Tour de Cure is coming up, and you guys are with us every year. Sure, let's see. Carla, there you go. Okay. First of all, Carla, you're a diabetes educator, right?
I am.
Okay, so tell us what this is all about.
So the Tour de Cure is a major fundraiser to help support the American Diabetes Association in Montana. And we have a tour event that we do every year. It's our one big fundraiser, and it helps to support, for example, kids going to kids camp, gives them sponsorships, as well as just helping to fund the organization of the camp. And it does other things like provides materials for people that have been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So it works for both type 1 and type 2. The tour this year is on September 12. It's at Headwater State Park.
It'll be a little cooler by then.
It will be a little cooler by then.
We're hoping anyway.
And we're hoping.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then it's for everybody. It's families. It's a big family event, whether you have diabetes or not. It's a great place to be and bring the family. We have a 12-mile family ride on bike trail that's paved. We have a 25, a 50, and a 100-mile bike ride for those that like a little more road adventure.
Wow.
We have a 5K walk or run. So those that don't have bikes, that's not an excuse anymore. And we just added this year a 5-mile single-track mountain bike route. That's kind of our launch for next year. We're hoping for a more extreme one, but this year that's and it's all at Headwater State Park.
All you have to go is just go up Marshall Mountain. You'll find a very challenging cross-country bicycle.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, Keenan, grab that microphone because you're tall. Bring it up there where you are. There you go.
All right, get it up here.
So first of all, neat shirt.
Oh, well, thank you. This is actually from the Diabetes Association.
There you go. So tell
clever.
us what is your role in all this?
Well, I have been volunteering with the Diabetes Association for about 7 years now to help with the Tour de Cure event with Carla and her husband and my folks. But the shirt is actually, I'm training for the 100-mile ride down in Colorado for the Tour de Cure down there.
Wow. So what got you into this?
Honestly, I'm going to say my mother kind of wrangled me into it, and it's become something I'm very passionate about. My younger sister is type 1, and both of my grandfathers are type 2 diabetics.
Wow.
So it's something close to home for me.
So you're intimately familiar with this whole thing, right?
Definitely.
Okay.
So a 100-mile race in Colorado?
Yeah, doing a 100-mile ride down in Colorado in August.
Now, I understand this is there's like 40 states that participate in this, right? In the Tour de Cure.
Yeah.
So are
it's
you planning on
nationwide.
doing one in every state, or are you biased towards the Intermountain West?
I personally am not. It just so happens that those are the ones that I'm able to participate in.
Gotcha.
I wish I could do all of them.
So the Headwaters race, which is in September, will you be doing that one?
I won't be riding in that one, but I'll be there volunteering. So
Okay.
that's why I'm going to Colorado, is I help with the one up here in Montana every year.
Well, that's so cool. So you kind of get to participate on both ends of the spectrum.
Yep.
So tell us what it's like to be a volunteer at these.
Oh, it's great. It's definitely a family-friendly event. It's a group of incredibly passionate people spending definitely more than a day. It takes an insane amount of planning to pull this event off, and I'm just honored to be a part of it every year.
All right. So Carla, grab the mic one more time and give us the when, the where, the how much, and how do we get signed up?
I will do that. So it's Saturday, September 12th, and sign up is open, so people can get online right now. You register at diabetes.org/Tour de Cure Montana. If you just Google Tour de Cure Montana, it'll come up as well. It is a fundraiser, so just be aware of that. 75% of the money stays in Montana, and some of it goes to research and website development, that kind of thing. If you don't feel like you want to walk, run, bike, you can come and volunteer. We always are enjoying having volunteers. We have a big barbecue afterwards. Bountiful Harvest is going to provide us with our barbecue this year, which is a farm-to-table program. So that'll be a delicious barbecue that's part of the ride. So we hope people come. We've raised $175,000 to $225,000 over the last few years, and once again, it really helps to support the cause.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for coming. You
Oh,
guys.
absolutely. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, it was great to be here.
Pleasure meeting you, sir, and good to see you again, ma'am. And we're going to do it again next year, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if we're here and you're here, we'll all be together. So we're gonna take a quick break. Come right back with more, talking about how to help your business with something that's right here at home.
And then after that, we'll have a special guest to talk about the Affordable Care Act decision from the Supreme Court that happened this morning. 6-3 decision. We'll talk about which way it went after the break.
Yeah. I'll be right back. And we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. And we have another guest in the studio. And we love Alex because she does good things for our company. And Alex, first of all, welcome to our program.
Thank you, guys.
Now, this is your first time.
This is my very first time. It's pretty exciting and a little nerve-wracking.
All right. Now, tell us about what TSI is all about.
Yeah, so I work for a portion of Town Square Media called Town Square Interactive, and I get to do really cool things. I just get to drive around Missoula all day and talk to small business owners about their web marketing and figure out if there's a way for us to bring them additional clients just by leveraging the power of the internet, basically.
So let's pretend John's a small business owner. Which
Yeah.
he was for a short time, by the way. How would I know if I needed your help?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I always encourage every business owner that I talk to first and foremost do a search online. If your ideal customer was looking for you tomorrow, if you're a siding guy or a general contractor, if your ideal customer was doing a search online for you tomorrow, would they find you? And would what they find make that sale for you? Is it a good representation?
Because right now, when you think about it, most people, when they look for something, the first place they go, they grab that cell phone or they grab their online or whatever, or that tablet, and they type in, okay, plumber, and boom, there's a whole bunch of plumbers. Well, a lot of folks don't realize how those plumbers and others get to the top of the list.
Exactly. Yep. And there's just kind of a set of criteria. It doesn't really have to do with if you're the biggest fish in Missoula or if you're the busiest. It pretty much has to do with if you're willing to jump through the hoops that Google lays out.
So I'm skeptical as an individual, and I think of like the internet as modern day voodoo, and the people that sell stuff on it as modern day voodoo magicians. And I'm afraid I'm going to go and need something cured. I'm going to get slapped in the face with a chicken foot, and nothing's actually going to be cured or fixed on the internet.
Yes.
So how do I know if I think I have a problem with what I have on my internet and people accessing my page? How do I know that what you would do for me would actually get them to my page?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, one thing that is great about digital marketing is it tends to be about the highest accountability marketing that you can possibly do for your business. So currently, if you don't have some pretty detailed analytics associated with your web marketing, and if you can't tell, exactly how many calls you're getting and exactly how many new clients that's turning into, then maybe it's time to reevaluate and make sure that those loopholes are closed.
So tell me what you do when you sit down with, say, a John,
Yeah.
or someone who is
Yes.
relatively ignorant about these things, and you have to do a lot of educating, right?
Yeah, it's really fun though. So I get to sit down, kind of dig into the nitty gritty of their business and figure out, who their ideal customers are. And then basically what I do is I help all of my clients maintain up-to-date websites. I make sure that they're getting found in search results. And maybe most importantly, I make sure that they're mobile friendly. So we want to make sure that anytime that someone's searching specifically on a mobile phone for your business, that they're able to find it and your site is mobile friendly. So that means you're not pinching and pulling and squeezing.
Now, what do you mean by mobile friendly? Obviously, it's cell phones. But
Yeah.
I already have a website. It works fine.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it just cross apply to the cell phone?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So pull up your site and see if it's just your normal site shrunken down to phone size. If it is, it makes it very difficult for your potential clients to read that information when it's supposed to be a big site on this tiny little screen. So it should auto format with a click to call and click for directions straight to your business, as well as just formatting specifically for that device you're on. And actually, as of April 21st, Google has announced that if your website is not mobile friendly, you're pretty much blacklisted off the first page of Google. So it's specifically important
It's
now.
like putting a big Confederate flag on your website.
Oh,
It's going to get you in
yes.
big trouble.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. So we're coming to the end of our time together. So we need to find out how to get in touch with you to make this all happen.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can call me on my cell phone at 406-220-0230 or just check us out online at townsquareinteractive.com.
townsquareinteractive.com.
Yep.
And if you've ever noticed that, of course, our radio stations are deeply involved in the internet. We each have our own website.
Yes,
where
yes.
We're doing news, and it's also mobile friendly, right?
Yes, correct.
And you have
Peter's
helped
in
us with
the
that.
big gerbil wheel that actually energizes the internet.
Yeah.
That's why he doesn't get any sleep.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
true.
Alex, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, guys.
And thanks for all you do, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
We appreciate it. We're going to come right back, and we have another special guest. In case you haven't heard, The U.S. Supreme Court has done it again. As Ronald Reagan used to say, there you go again. And we're going to come back and talk about it in just a moment. Here we are back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. I'm going to go right to the telephone this morning because a huge decision by the U.S. Supreme Court came down about a half an hour ago. Joining us is the senior fellow with healthcare issues from the Manhattan Institute. It's Paul Howard. Mr. Howard, how are you, sir?
Doing great this morning. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure to visit with you, sir. May I just read the Associated Press story?
Go right ahead.
Okay, here we go. And I'll try not to sound snarky. The Supreme Court has upheld the nationwide tax subsidies under President Barack Obama's health care overhaul in a ruling that preserves health insurance for millions of Americans. The justices said in a 6-3 ruling this morning that the subsidies that 8.7 million people currently receive to make insurance affordable do not depend on where they live under the 2010 health care law. The outcome is the second major victory for Obama in politically charged Supreme Court tests of his most significant domestic achievement. Chief Justice John Roberts again voted with his liberal colleagues in support of the law. Roberts was also the key vote to uphold the law in 2012. Justice Anthony Kennedy also voted with his more liberal colleagues.
All right. Paul Howard from Manhattan Institute's back with us talking about this. Give us your take on what just happened.
Look, I think what just happened is, another instance of, and this is, reading between the lines, Roberts saying that I'm not going to step into this dispute. I'm not going to have the court step into this dispute. Congress did this. Congress can fix this. This was clearly the intent of Congress, or at least the majority of, and this is Roberts' interpretation, I'm saying, this was clearly the intent of the majority when they passed this, and if they want to do something about it, let them do something about it. I'm not going to step in here and strike it down and involve the court in what's clearly a national legislative debate. That, I think, is his kind of stance here. Now, what he did do is say, look, when you read the law within its context, and he starts his opinion by talking about what Massachusetts did, which is basically Obamacare in Massachusetts, to say there's community rating, there's guaranteed issue, there's a requirement that you buy health insurance. If you struck down the subsidies, the whole thing falls apart because healthy people will not buy insurance without the subsidies to lower the cost of insurance. But if I was to step back, I'd say the real loser here is also the democratic process, because the administration rammed through what is clearly an extraordinarily partisan bill under wholly partisan circumstances, and did it in a way that the intent was not clear and was contradictory, and the law was poorly drafted, and they didn't say that this was the interpretation until 2012 when the IRS stepped in, after it was clear that most states, 30-some-odd states, were not going to create their own state health insurance exchanges. So I think that this was really an ex post facto justification by the administration, and the Supreme Court bought it.
Now, let me read you some of the statements that have come out excuse me, from the decisions. And I've just been picking through what other people are writing here. So, but I understand that Justice Scalia says we should rename it SCOTUS Care instead of Obamacare now, because they've had almost as much of a role in actual legislation here, because as we know with the taxes ruling from the first decision. But now, and this is from the actual decision, quote, in this instance, the context and structure of the act compel us to depart from what would otherwise be the most natural reading of the pertinent statutory phrase. When I hear that sentence, it sounds like they're saying, we know it says this, but we believe it should say this.
I think that's right. I mean, I think that again, I mean, the liberals were going to do this because they wanted to uphold the law. Roberts and Kennedy, jumped in here, and again, I'm still reading through the decision as well, but jumped in here to say, we're going to find a way to salvage this. This is not to say that this is a reading you couldn't take, but it is a bending over backwards to find a reading that fits. And again, the problem here is there's another passage from the law, I believe it's from the opinion. It says the act does not reflect the type of care and deliberation one might expect of such significant legislation. So, is this the kind of process where we can have an extraordinarily partisan, confused, unclear process, and then that doesn't mean it. That takes one approach, and then the IRS can go back and retroactively rewrite the intent of the law. That's an incentive for Congress to pass confused legislation, and then for a future administration to say, no, it doesn't really mean that. It means something completely different. That, I think, is a real problem for the democratic process in the long run, that we're encouraging a partisan legislation in Congress that a future administration can say means something very different.
Well, aside from the governmental process and the legislative process, apparently there's problems here with the linguistic process.
So they can't read.
Scalia, again, another quote from him on this, words no longer have meaning.
Right.
Yeah, and don't forget the way this whole thing happened back in 2010. So Scott Brown won in Massachusetts. He would have been the 40th vote. He would have been the filibuster. So they had to deem the Senate bill through the reconciliation process as the final bill, and went right into conference. Didn't have the opportunity to go into conference. So they had to pass the Senate bill without going through a process of a conference that they would have gone through and cleaned up the law. Now, having said that, the democratic process, small d, not big D, never got a chance to go out. The law was and has been unpopular. The people spoke and elected Senator Brown, and this whole thing was rammed down our throats effectively. So I think that is a real loss for democracy and a real loss for the process, and it's a real loss for the country, although I would caution conservatives not to overreact, because Obamacare will stand or fall on its own premises, and there are a couple of very big parts of the law that are actually sunsetting this year and next year called the risk corridors and reinsurance. Those are basically subsidies that are shifted around to insurers that are losing money under the law. And when those subsidies go away, there's all likelihood that rates are going to shoot up, and that more and more people are going to drop coverage because it's too expensive. We've already seen a number of insurers in many states issuing requests for double-digit increases. So over time, this thing is going to get increasingly expensive, cause more people to drop out, and Congress is going to have to step back in and fix this thing at some point. And conservatives need to get their ducks in a row and say, okay, this is what we're going to do to the law, especially if you manage to take the White House in 2016. Then you've got a range of options out there, and you don't have to wait for a court decision to try and save you.
There was the opt-out decision as part of the last Affordable Care Act win at the Supreme Court that allowed states to opt out of expansion. Do you think there are any landmines for the Obama administration in this current decision?
I don't know. I'm going to have to go through it and very carefully and read it. One of the interesting things here, more and more states are finding that their state exchanges are not working, and they may shut them down and send all those people into the federal exchanges. So that, for the long-term health of the law, I think that's an interesting, question how that's going to play out, because more costs will be shifted to federal taxpayers. The argument that the law actually saves money is going to go up in smoke, and then that's going to open up another line of attack. So again, the structure of the law itself is problematic for its long-term survival, and that's where we kind of have to have our attention focused. But as you said, there are still opportunities at the state level, particularly for states that didn't do the Medicaid expansion, to say we're not going to buy into this premise unless we get a lot more flexibility from this administration or a future administration.
I just got an email from my governor. I'd like you to respond to it. He says, quote, "This is a welcome decision, as I do everything I can to ensure all Montanans have access to affordable health care. 40,000 Montanans can now be sure that they will not lose their health insurance or have their taxes increased in order to maintain coverage," end quote. Well, what would you say to my governor?
Well, the taxes have already been increased under Obamacare on employers, on individuals. The cost of insurance under Obamacare, according to our estimates, has gone up by at least 40%. That's been offset by subsidies, but since there's no such thing as a free lunch, that money is, in fact, coming from taxpayers and businesses. So it is taking a large chunk of change out of people's pockets and shifting subsidies around. So that decision's already been made. And, of course, I think that's a little bit of a red herring. Republicans in Congress would have stepped in to find some solution. It would have been a very different solution, I think, but they would have stepped into some solution that would allow a transition to a more market-based, more individual-based system than we've got now under Obamacare. The challenge remains about how to articulate that in a way that most people are going to understand and support.
We have about a minute left. I want you to tell us, it's a 6-3 decision, right? So it's not just Roberts flipping on this, right?
Right.
Who are the other people that changed their minds?
Well, I mean, the big swing votes were always going to be Roberts and Kennedy. The last decision, King v. Burwell, I'm sorry, not King v. Burwell, NFIB versus Sebelius, Kennedy sided with the dissent and Roberts sided with the majority. So the expected liberals, Sotomayor, Ginsburg, and the rest, held as a block, and then, quote unquote, Kennedy
Paul,
and Roberts flipped.
I am so sorry. We're completely out of time. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day and talking with us. We appreciate it.
Terrific. Thanks very much.
Thank you. We'll take a quick break. Come right back. All right, we are back, and it's going to seem like deja vu all over again. We just got off the phone with a gentleman from the Manhattan Institute. We have another gentleman from the Manhattan Institute with us today to talk about a different topic.
That's right. Well, maybe. We'll see how it works in.
Yeah.
We're going to be speaking with Jared Meyer. One of the interesting things about Jared Meyer, he's already a fellow at the Manhattan Institute, but he's only 24. And yesterday, he was speaking to the House Republican Finance Committee about the issues that millennials face. And it's kind of refreshing to hear a millennial talking about his generation. And I think that's what should be an engaging conversation on the show today. So welcome to the program today, Jared.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so tell us what your pitch was. Now, I should also tell you, Jared is also published. He recently wrote a book called Disinherited, How Washington is Betraying America's Young. So we'll talk about that betrayal today, I'm sure. Look, just give us basic...
Speaking of betrayal.
Speaking of betrayal. Peter's recalling the Affordable Care Act decision this morning. What was the basic theme of your pitch to the committee yesterday, Jared?
Well, everyone knows that young people tend to lean towards the Democratic Party, and Republicans realize that now that millennials are the largest generation, they need to start appealing to them and start speaking in terms that they can understand and get them excited about politics and engaging in the process. So the House Republican Policy Committee was working with a few younger people and polling experts to try to figure out how they can craft their message. And a lot of what Republicans are promoting is actually very popular with millennials, but how they can craft their message to appeal to them. So what I brought up is Republicans need to stress that they're here to fix the economy. Millennials overwhelmingly care about getting jobs, moving on with their lives, and moving out of their parents' basements. If we look, actually 56% of 18 to 24-year-olds are still living with their parents. So I think that's their biggest concern. But when Republicans can run on fixing the economy rather than being your priest, that's going to start to appeal to millennials more.
So tell us, we actually have a young millennial in the room, and she's probably getting a little antsy that I'm even bringing her up. But Dominique Gisti is one of our voices here on KGVO. She's an intern from the University of Montana. Oh, what are you, about 20 years old?
Yeah, I'm 20 years old.
All right. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Jared, most millennials, people under 30, they vote much less regularly than people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Why do you think that is, Jared?
Well, you're exactly right. In the 2012 presidential election, young people only turned out about 40% to vote, whereas people over 65, over 70% of them voted. So I guess seniors, even though they're in retirement, take voting as a job. But the reason many millennials choose not to vote is they really feel left behind by politicians in both parties. They tend, on a whole, to be fiscally conservative, but more socially moderate or liberal. And they don't see politicians that are appealing to them on a wide array of issues. And a lot of what's happening in Washington is policies tend to favor older established interests at the expense of young people. So they feel disengaged with the process and sort of left behind. So in addition to the regular reasons that young people just tend not to vote as much as seniors, it's especially pronounced now because they see no one standing up for their interest in Washington.
So I want you to tell me a little bit about how that is actually impacting younger the millennial generation. So it seems to me, if it's a fight among different interests, that's actually politicians almost always pit every election. You know, this interest group versus this interest group, et cetera, et cetera.
Divide and conquer.
If that is true, and older people like Peter, for example, are outvoting younger people,
That's
Dominique.
Yeah.
If that's actually what's happening, are they voting in a self-interested manner that actually helps the older generation and hurts the millennials? And do you see it that way?
Well, one thing is this really isn't a generational issue, restoring opportunity to young people. If you go down and talk with a community of retirees, you'll be lucky if you can get out of there without having your ear talked off about their grandkids and seeing pictures of them. So this isn't a smoke-filled room with members of the AARP all sitting thinking about how they can take it to their grandchildren. Instead, this is just a general tendency, as you started to point out, of government policy where the people who are voting and pushing their interests tend to be older Americans. But programs such as Social Security and Medicare are really putting a burden on America's young, and it extends far beyond that into education and workforce regulation, too.
So I got to ask you, I know this will come up this election cycle. It's going to be one of the major selling points for progressive candidates. I would be surprised if it wasn't anyhow. University tuition, either pitching it for free or more funding for it. What's your take as a millennial?
Well, what we see right now is about 70% of people who walked across the stage to get their diplomas in May came out with college debt, and that average was $27,000. But student loans have increased, but the main driver behind this has been the increase in college tuition. And it's hard to explain, and it doesn't sound quite as attractive on the face as just free college. But the current system of federal student loans, the way it's set up, effectively writes a blank check to colleges. It says build all the water slides, rock climbing walls, hire all the administrators you want, and don't worry, taxpayers are going to be picking up the bill so that you can keep increasing your cost and not increasing your educational outcomes. If we look since 1978, college costs have shot up about 1,200%, yet the cost of food has only went up 240% over that time. And it's pretty hard to believe that college has gotten 5 times better since way back in the late 70s. So colleges just keep increasing their costs, and taxpayers are stuck with the burden.
Tell you what, we're up against a break. If you'll hang on just a second, and we need to take care of some business
We
here.
do have some business to take care of, and hopefully we can make it your business as well. What we need from you is you to call us. If you call us at 721-1290, you will win free coffee from the Rocket Coffee Stand. You don't have to misinterpret law. You don't have to make a Supreme Court decision
or know how to read.
Even know how to talk to a millennial or a multi-generational individual like Peter, who's a double centenarian. Centenarian. There we go. Man, there's so many vowels.
I'm well over 200 years
English.
old, in case you're wondering.
All you have to do is give us a call at 721-1290. The first caller wins free coffee and toast. Don't even need to talk on the radio.
On Talkback 721-1290, 1-800-568-5309. All right, I'm Peter Christian. Of course, that's John King over there. We have a special guest on.
That's right, Jared Myers with us this morning.
Jared Myers with the Manhattan Institute.
And I'm going to put my intern on the spot here.
Hi, I'm Dominique Giusti.
So, Dominique, I got to ask you, we got an election season coming up. People are already running, throwing their hat in their primary race. Of all of the issues out there, as a millennial, what is the most important voting issue for you?
Well, I have to agree with what he was just talking about. I think tuition costs is definitely one of my main concerns right now. But I also think that gay marriage is also coming pretty strong for us this time of year. So I think that's important too.
So is that a likely answer? Something you think you'd hear at most college campuses there, Jared?
Oh, definitely. And I told the House Republican Policy Committee, they asked, what's really the issue that's a line in the sand for millennials, where if a candidate doesn't support it, they're not going to get young people's support. And I told them it's same-sex marriage. Even though about similar percent of millennials favor legalizing marijuana, they don't have the same passion and view it in the same way as legalizing same-sex marriage. So as long as Republicans continue to run on a platform of marriages only between a man and a woman, and we need to ban same-sex marriage on the federal level, they're going to have a very hard time gaining the millennial vote.
Okay, so when it comes to millennials and all these candidates, now some people are able to deftly maneuver from one side of the aisle to the other. Hillary Clinton, for example, is staunchly against gay marriage and now is for it. I'm sure that no one will probably ask her a question about that. Although I did hear a long interview with her on NPR where they did just that. How would you recommend for candidates that have said one thing in the past to transfer their position over if they wanted to do so to gain votes?
Well, Rob Portman actually did that when he found out that his son was gay, and he said, I just never really realized the effect that banning gay marriage had. And, running on the platform of anti-love is kind of hard. It's not a winning political strategy. So I think what they can do is say, maybe this isn't what I personally agree with, but I want people to be happy, and I was wrong before. Now I know some friends who are gay or lesbian, and I think that this would be, more in the proper role of government for us to get the economy going rather than worry about what's going on in your house.
Now, as far as so far, we've got the top two issues. I'm going to make you dig a little bit deeper, though. I want to get you to give me the next three issues on your agenda, or we could just start with the first one. After we talk about college tuition and gay marriage, what's next on the list? What do you start to think about?
I think
as
it's
an issue?
Definitely getting jobs. If we look at the unemployment rate for people who are 20 to 24 years old, it's still over 10%. I mean, what recovery is going on right now when the unemployment rate's 10% for people 20 to 24, and it's 17% for teenagers? So there need to be pro-growth policies that work on incentivizing hiring rather than everything the government's been doing right now.
Now, Jared, this is the old guy. This is Peter, okay? And I'm in my 60s now, and even though I don't sound like it, anyway, I at some point in my life I'm going to want to retire, but because of the way the business I'm in and the salaries that I've been making all my career, I'm not going to be able to do that. So that means I'm going to be in a job that I have a lot of experience, all that good stuff. So somebody like Dominique is not going to be able to step into my chair and do what I do because I need the job. So I guess I'm wondering how is there any way, politically speaking, to speak to both generations and say we can make this work out for both of you?
Well, thankfully, there's not just a set amount of jobs. The labor force participation rate for older Americans has been rising, and that's a great thing because life expectancy has been rising. However, it's been dropping drastically at the bottom end of the scale, with young people choosing not to work. And we all know that work teaches things that education simply can't, a lot of the hard and soft skills that you need to succeed in a career. So we need to put in policies that allow businesses to create new jobs and expand outward so that young people can work too, and, hey, they can work right alongside their grandparents and parents. The more jobs, the better.
Now, I got to ask you, young people choosing not to work, Dom or Mr. Myers, either of you can respond to this. Why? Are they just lazy? I don't understand. And I'm close to being a millennial. I'm 33. Wait, sorry, just turned 34. I keep forgetting that. So I'm getting old there. I'm almost in Peter territory.
You're out of here.
But when I was a kid, I was working when I was 12. I had a paper route. I worked all through high school. I worked all through college. Most of the kids I encounter these days don't even get a job until after they graduate university.
Well, in my opinion, a lot of my colleagues, they are supported by their parents because their full-time job is school. And so I guess parents are just supporting them more now.
Is that a good thing, do you think?
I mean, I enjoy it.
Well, let me put it this way. If your parents were not able to help you and support you, would you go out and get a full-time job and continue your schooling?
Yeah, last semester I had 2 jobs and was a full-time student too. So you just have to do what you have to do and make time for it if you can.
There you go. So are you going to graduate? I don't mean to be nosy. Are you going to graduate with a significant amount of debt, anywhere near the average that Jared talked about, $27,000?
Luckily, I will not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because my daughter graduated with $24,000
Wow.
in debt, and she paid it off in 18 months.
Wow.
Because she's a nurse over at Seattle Children's Hospital.
It's not because Peter's got money bags.
No,
I can
it's
tell you
not.
that much.
It's because she worked extra shifts for 2.5, almost 2 years, and paid off. Her goal was to pay off her student loans. She drove a POS car. She did not go out. She didn't.
A Pontiac or a Scion?
Like something like that. But anyway, she worked and scraped and saved, and her goal was to pay off that loan. And now she is debt free at age 28.
Well, congratulations.
That's awesome.
So anyway,
yeah, it sounds like your daughter used student loans as what they're supposed to be for when it's an investment in education. But unfortunately, right now, only 40% of college freshmen are going to graduate within 4 years, and at 6 years, that number is still 60%. So we have a lot of people who are going into college, taking on a lot of loans, and studying fields that aren't in demand, such as healthcare services, which is in demand, and they're coming out of college with lots of debt, low employment prospects, or they drop out of college altogether. So I think we need to reevaluate the sort of bias we have against community college and technical schools, where it's viewed as almost a consolation prize for those who don't go to four-year schools. Instead, we need to shift people more towards going to these more affordable options, where then they're not taking on lots of debt to either not graduate or not be able to find a job in their field afterwards.
Yeah, and my son, who was 3 years older, was able to go all the way through school and worked full time and graduated with no debt. So anyway, so we're up against a break, and Mike, we're going to get to your call here in a moment. We're talking with Jared Meyer, who is talking with us from the Manhattan Institute. He's a 24-year-old fellow, and that is a very significant achievement. So we're going to come right back with more in just a moment. Hey, it's Talk Back, and it's Thursday. I'm trying to sound as young as I can here. I'm in a room full of young people, and there's a young guy on the phone. It's discriminatory, I tell you. Anyway, welcome back to Talk Back. That's John King. I'm Peter Christian. Joining us on the phone, Jared Meyer, who's a fellow at the Manhattan Institute and a policy analyst.
And on the phone, we have Mike, who called me up and said he knows why kids don't get jobs.
All right, let's find out. Mike, you are on Talk Back. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons why kids can't get jobs is idiotic regulations and laws we've passed over the years that said you can't hire them. But the other thing is, and this I know for a fact, little square bales of hay, everybody wants them, but nobody wants to make them anymore. And everyone you ask, how come you don't make small square bales anymore? I can't get anyone to buck bales. The kids absolutely will not do it. And besides that, there's a liability, and they don't go into the liability part of it. But the fact is, they just ain't going to do it because they can sit home and not make more money doing nothing, I guess. But everyone I've ever talked to that handles small bales will say, yeah, we just can't get anybody to do the work.
Do you mean to tell me, Mike, that people aren't willing to grab those bales, those 60-pound bales, and have spiders crawl all over you and stuff like that? That's a rite of passage living in Montana.
And not anymore, it's not. You just better get on the phone and call all these people and ask them why they don't make small bales, and I'll guarantee you they're going to tell you the same thing. The other thing is, we got so dadgum many regulations that you can't hire somebody, you can't do this, and you say you got something in the yard, you say, I want that cleaned up, I'll give you $100 or $200. Oh no, the liability involved in that is, no, you can't do it. I mean, seriously, we need to repeal a whole lot of laws.
Okay.
But there's one other thing about college. Somebody needs to audit these colleges and find out why the price of that they're going up 10 times faster than the inflation rate or whatever it is. It is absolutely absurd for colleges to go that far up.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Well, I'll let you go.
Appreciate that. Now, what's interesting, and Jared, I don't know if you know this, but at the University of Montana, tuition has been frozen, okay, for 10 years. 10 years.
No, that's impressive.
And a lot of it has to do with the money the state gives to the university system, and of course, I don't know where else the money comes from. And
of course, in those 10 years, the University of Montana student population just boomed, right? No, it hasn't. It's been going downhill, actually.
Well, it has dropped, but not precipitously. But anyway, but there's a school down the other side of the state that's more of an engineering type school, and we're a liberal arts university here at the University of Montana, whereas at MSU they're more architecture, agriculture, things like that, and their enrollment is up. So a lot of it has to do on where the jobs are. Is that right, Jared?
I would think so, because a lot of students now are realizing with this crushing student loan burden that they're facing, they need to major in something that can lead to a job afterwards. But I think what Mike hit on, which was especially true, is that we just have too many regulations, especially when it comes to the labor market. The U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, if we're just looking on the federal level, is now over 175,000 pages long. And this isn't just legal rambling and pages of legal text. Instead, there's over 1 million commandments from Washington in those pages. Words such as shall, must, or cannot, where Washington's telling you need to do something. I mean, how is any entrepreneur supposed to keep track of which of those regulations apply to them and try to create jobs so that young people can have more opportunity?
Allow me to ask you this. With Bill Gates and all the folks who invented things back in the 70s, 80s, with the regulations that are in place today, would that kind of entrepreneurism be possible, or would people be clever enough to work around it?
Well, I actually heard that Steve Jobs and what he did with Steve Wozniak with Apple was illegal when he was running it in his garage. So he couldn't even done it back then.
Yeah, what would OSHA say? This is not properly ventilated in this garage, right?
Exactly. And if we look at it right now, I don't think it's any coincidence that internet technology field's currently the least regulated sector of the economy. And there, young people can command six-figure salaries even if they don't have a college degree. They can wear whatever they want to work, whether that's sandals and a hoodie and shorts, because they're in demand and they're adding value to the production process. But if we look at other sectors such as manufacturing or energy, there's so many regulations there that it is really any wonder that we haven't seen as much innovation and as much opportunity for young Americans.
And not only that, but those jobs are now in China, in Taiwan, in Indonesia, in you name it, anywhere other than America.
Yeah, we do everything we can to make it unattractive to invest in America.
All right. So, tell you what, we're going to take a break. And Ronald is on the line. We're going to get your call on here in just a minute. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think if we went back in time to Peter's generation, they would have been talking about Vietnam, and foreign policy. And in my generation, we were talking about Iraq. Does that even hit the radar for you people? If you're under 20, if you're under 27, do you care about foreign policy at all? Because I never hear it talked about. And so we'll talk about that after the break.
Yeah, Dominique's going, what? Foreign policy? We'll be right back. Hey, it's Talk Back. We're back. And that's John King. I'm Peter Christian. Jared Meyer joining us on the phone. He's a fellow at the Manhattan Institute, 24 years old, and he has written a book called Disinherited, How Washington is Betraying. Thank you.
So you have to know my handwriting is basically hieroglyphics mixed with Chinese kanji or Japanese kanji.
It's cuneiform. But anyway, let's get Ronald on the line. Ronald, first of all, thank you for your patience. What's on your mind, sir?
Yes, good morning. Well, someone made a statement that the University of Montana froze the tuition again this year, and it's been frozen for 10 years. That's smoke and mirrors, and while they may have frozen the tuition, I've had children at the University of Montana for the past 10 or 12 years, and I can tell you the fees have more than doubled. So actually it costs 100% more to go to the University of Montana today than it did 15 years ago. The tuition may be frozen, but the fees are not. It's my understanding that next year the university is going to have a fee to fund a study to find out if paraplegics should take auto repair. Stuff like this is just silly. But again, my whole point is that the tuition may be frozen, but the fees are not. And the cost to go to the University of Montana has doubled over the past 15 years and will continue to do it until they stop charging the students these ridiculous fees that none of them use.
All right, now, may I ask you a question? Is there a way to quantify that statement?
Such as?
Such as, is it published anywhere? Is there a way?
Oh, yeah, well, just call the university and say, what is the tuition? What are the fees?
Okay.
Do you know that anybody over, I believe it's 60 or 65 years old in the state of Montana, can go to the university free of charge, free of tuition?
Hallelujah!
Your fees will cost you more than you could possibly afford.
It's kind of like lowering taxes, but then jacking up the rate on
Seriously,
petty traffic crime and things like that.
I knew a person 65 years old that wanted to go to the University of Montana free, and it was going to cost him $2,700.
Wow. Okay. Well, thanks for the call, Ronald.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So what do you think about that, Jared?
Well, we do see colleges are moving into things that don't really help students as much. Like I said, if college education had gotten so much better over the last few years, maybe then the student loan issue wouldn't be such a problem. But instead, what colleges are doing is hiring more and more administrators, building more pointless amenities. When they a lot of people think, oh, we just need to get rid of tenured professors, but that's not what's driving up the cost. Tenured professors have actually went way down, and they're hiring adjuncts who are very affordable too. So it's not on the teaching end; it's on the back end administrative side. And as I said, the current system of federal student aid, it's writing a blank check to colleges, and even the U.S. Treasury Department found that for every increased dollar in federal student aid, scholarships fell by $1. So we're shifting the burden now to other taxpayers rather than to the schools and to people who are attending them.
Okay, I got to ask you, this is a question I kind of teased before the break, because it's something I find as being strikingly different in this generation. You know, I grew up watching the wall fall down, but there was still the issue of the Cold War in the back of everybody's mind. I know Peter grew up during, the Vietnam era. America had been created at the time Peter was growing up, but there was this big divide between America and England.
One of these days.
But I guess my point was, it doesn't seem like foreign.
Oh gosh! What happened?
My microphone went off. It doesn't seem like foreign policy is an issue at all for the millennial generation, and I wanted to get your take on that because that's going to be a thing that is talked about a lot, especially if Hillary Clinton's the nominee. She's using that as one of her main muscle points against Mr. Sanders is that she has foreign policy experience as a head of the State Department.
Yeah, and millennials still do care about foreign policy. It's just kind of down their list of priorities. I remember the Pew Research Center put together what each age group views as the biggest topic that the government should focus on, and boomers and the silent generation both had terrorism as number one. For millennials, they were about 7 things above terrorism. So young people tend to view the world as less threatening. They didn't grow up during the Cold War. They didn't grow up during any of the world wars. They see international cooperation rather than U.S. military might is the way to go forward. But surprisingly, though, they do support boots on the ground against ISIS, and I think that's because of ISIS's very public, disgusting campaign that they've been running on Twitter and other social media.
One thing that the kids, of course, either John or Dominique have never experienced is something that people my age would remember called duck and cover. And that was when if you see a nuclear blast out your school window, you jump underneath your desk and cover your head. And that's supposed to protect you. I mean, there were drills.
That's why all the pencils had lead in them, and so did the paint in the room back when you were a kid.
So anyway, I just taking you back a little bit.
So yeah, I mean, but you know, it's still these millennials grew up with 9/11. I would think on the TV screens, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You remember watching that. And probably being glued to the I bailed on my college classes. I thought I was going to have to go to class. I was like, no, I got to stay. I got to watch this. And I stayed there the whole day, watched everything that unfolded that morning. And I remember at the time when I started watching, it was before they knew it was a terrorist attack. We thought it was a plane accident. After that, I mean, obviously foreign policy's got to play some kind of role, right?
Well, millennials, as I said, I think a lot of it, they do remember 9/11, but the long, drawn-out entanglements, especially in the Iraq War afterwards, makes them weary of long foreign interventions. They kind of don't believe that everything the U.S. gets involved in is going to work out perfectly. There could be wrinkles in the plan, as they've seen, and they have less faith that everything the U.S. government does overseas is going to lead to positive outcomes.
All right, we're up against a break. We're going to come right back. Jared Meyer joining us from the Manhattan Institute. Tom, if you'll hang on, we're going to get your call on immediately after the break, and we'll be right back. And we're back on Talkback, 721-1290. John King, I'm Peter Christian. Our good friend Dominique, who's one of our interns, thank you for being willing to talk with us today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I kind of got thrown into it, but it's been fun.
Hopefully we haven't put you on the spot too much.
So actually, we wanted to talk about interns a little bit earlier. And since you're an intern, now you get college credit here, so we're not breaking the law, right?
Yeah.
Right? You're getting college credit.
Yeah, I'm getting college credit, but I had to pay for the college credit.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, let's get Tom on the line. Tom, thanks for holding. You're on with Jared Meyer. Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I guess this is a little bit earlier. I think it was Trapper Mike called in and was talking about bucking bales of hay.
Yes, sir.
You know, something interesting about that is, if you look at like what people are paying, they might be paying $10 an hour starting, or at least that's what they pay. But I don't think a lot of older people realize these days what people are looking at when they see, $10 an hour, because you could buck bales of hay, and it is itchy, and I do it too personally. It's kind of fun, but you could also get $10 an hour for stocking groceries.
Right.
So
I did that too.
Huge complication.
I did that too.
Yeah, but I mean, prickly stuff versus groceries. I think young people can see the difference. But Missoula is kind of unique because there's such a population of people that want jobs, that want to live here, so it's pretty easy to take advantage of as an employer. But unfortunately, it ends up hurting the economy because people don't have enough money to circulate locally, so they go to the absolute lowest bottom price they can, which tends to be the internet, and there's less money circulating among us for things. Less people are remodeling homes, stuff like that.
Although here's what's interesting. I have a friend. I go to all the home and garden shows because I work them as it's part of the radio station job. And many of the people in the trades, in the building trades, and that are involved in that, are having banner years right now because for some reason, many people are remodeling, they're rebuilding, they're fixing things that weren't fixed over during the GR, the Great Recession, capital G, capital R, and many of those folks who were not working are now working again and feeling pretty good about it.
The economy is definitely improving. I just think sometimes people's idea of starting out is a little bit silly for what, people are expecting to pay and what they can get in return out of it. I think $10 is this sort of magical mark that people believe in, but it doesn't really mean much anymore. I mean, a lot of people that own businesses haven't lived on, what they pay people in a very long time.
This is very true.
The economy might be better, but prices are up.
Yeah, Tom, thanks for the call. Thanks for that perspective. So, Jared, what do you think about what Tom said?
Well, I would say that obviously it's going to be hard to survive on $10 an hour, much less raise a family. But yet when we have the debate over raising the minimum wage, which is now taken over pretty much the whole country, that's all you hear about, you would think that 50% of people are earning that. But really, only 3% of American workers earn the minimum wage. And what we do when we increase it to levels of, let's say, $10 an hour, as President Obama has proposed, or $15 an hour like some labor groups are pushing, what we're doing is cutting off opportunity for young people. I know back when I got my first job when I was 15, there was no way I was worth $15 an hour, much less even the current federal minimum wage of $7.25.
I'm not
Luckily,
worth $15
I found a
an
Thai
hour
restaurant that was willing to pay me cash, so I could start off with about $5 an hour, what I was actually worth.
So I have to ask you, Dom. Most kids your age, do they like an increase in the minimum wage? Do they think it's a bad idea?
Oh, they love it. More money for them. But I don't know. I started with a low minimum wage. I just think that a pay is a pay at this point. So
Well, because you're living at home, right?
not anymore, no.
Oh, you're not. Okay. So, but when you were working, you were living at home, and so that paycheck was, in a way, it was kind of like gravy, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, okay. So, Jared?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you can keep your job after a minimum wage increase, then those are great. But what doesn't get seen is the people who lose their job or who never get hired in the first place. If I was an employer, I'm not going to take a chance on an unproven 16-year-old at $15 an hour, where at that rate I could go get someone who's more experienced, who's worked in whatever field I was looking to hire, and I'd bring them on instead. So when we raise the minimum wage, we're reducing opportunity.
Or what has happened quite a bit, especially in the food business, is they would say, okay, I can either choose to pay $15 an hour to somebody who I'll have to train or I can make a machine that will work for nothing, and I don't have to pay anybody $15 an hour.
Have Mr. Roboto add up the cans.
Those self-checkout machines are the most annoying things I've ever used. So
I hear you.
I swear I can't figure them out. Luckily, that wasn't on the test to get employed at the Manhattan Institute.
All right, let's get Bill on the line. Bill, you're on with Jared Meyer. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I apologize. This is going back to some of your comments earlier, but can't some of the same arguments for the cost trend in higher education, can't we use some of the same arguments for nationalizing higher education, similar to what we're doing with healthcare at this stage?
Oh, I would. Yeah, I think that's a great parallel. And if we look at healthcare, especially something that we should touch on at least with the Supreme Court decision today, it's really crazy how much healthcare costs have went up for young Americans. In the first year under the Affordable Care Act, 27-year-old males saw a 91% increase in their premiums. That's because under the law, this is in the letter of the law, I can't make this up, you can't pay less than 1/3 of what the highest paying person is paying for their premiums. So let's say a healthy young woman, she has to pay 1/3 of what an older sick person has to pay, even though young people under 30 only use an average of $600 a year in medical care. So they're paying to lower health care costs for older, wealthier Americans.
You're welcome, Peter.
All right, Bill, thanks for the call. We're up against we have our final break. It's just 1 minute. We have one line open, 721-1290, if you'd like to visit with Jared Meyer from the Manhattan Institute.
Yeah, when we get back. Jared, I'd like you to talk about interns. This is something that's come up both in Hillary Clinton's camp and obviously here in KGVO studios. So we'll talk about that after the break.
In 1 minute. Hey, we're back on Talk Back. That's John King. I'm Peter Christian, and that's the Grassroots. In case you're wondering who that band was, who are those guys? Okay. Also joining us in studio, Dominic Justice, and it's good to see you.
Juicy, right?
Juicy, yeah.
Juicy.
Juice and tea, yeah.
Juicy for justice. There's the campaign slogan right there.
All right. My apologies.
I wanted you to talk a little bit about interning. Now, Peter, this is probably totally foreign to you because it wasn't something around when you were growing up, I don't believe.
We called it being an apprentice.
Yeah, and that would likely lead to a job. My sister worked and paid basically to work as an intern after college, just so she could get experience and hopefully get attention of someone that might give her a job because it was so tight and so hard to get a job when she was exiting the college system and into the workforce. So what do you think about internships nationally, and do you think that the U.S. rules on them are fair or unfair, Mr. Myers?
Well, I think if we look at it, this is a new rule that was passed under Obama's Labor Department. Unpaid internships at for-profit companies are effectively illegal now. You have to give college credit for them. But yet, as usual with Washington, they exempted themselves in nonprofits. So you can still get an unpaid internship on Capitol Hill or in Obama's office, but you can't do so at a publishing company or other media company because they're for-profit. So, of course, we have to treat that entirely differently.
So I assume from the tenor of your voice that you think it's unfair. But I want to know which way you think it should go. Should there be unpaid internships at all kinds of for-profit companies, or should the nonprofits and political activists pony up and agree that they will pay their interns?
I think we should allow unpaid internships everywhere because economists actually ran an experiment early this year where they sent out over 10,000 resumes with little tweaks on it. And they found out that interning in a field had more effect on getting an interview than what you majored in. So let's say if you interned at a bank, you were more likely to get a call for an interview at a finance job than if you majored in finance. So when we're taking away unpaid internships and actually making people pay to do them in the terms of having to pay for college credit, for example, George Washington University here in D.C., a student could pay over $12,000 just to do an unpaid internship. So we're going from where it's not only unpaid to where then you're having to pay for it. So I think we should leave these opportunities that, again, teach something that can't be taught in school and let students take them.
Well, and especially when there's and of course there's market cycles. Montana is luckily for workers about to go into a worker shortage, so it'll be maybe a little bit easier in the near future to get a job. But a lot of the country, it's hard to get a job, and volunteering might be your leg up, especially if you're younger, to getting noticed, right?
Yeah, that's how I got my job at the Manhattan Institute. I had an unpaid internship here for the first summer, and then afterwards they were able to see my work and hire me on, and that's what I see with countless stories of my friends and colleagues.
Now, Jared, we have like 4 minutes left in the program, but there's something we haven't talked about yet, and that is the unbelievably high percentage of unemployment among African Americans, especially in the larger cities. Is there anything, as far as the Manhattan Institute and your ideas go, for these young people who are also millennials, by the way, for them to be able to better their opportunities?
Well, one thing we need, especially in inner cities, we tend to see higher levels of regulation than in rural communities. So we're cutting off a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurship. And if we look at over 70% of millennials want to own their own business at some point and work independently. So when we're making too many rules for them to comply with, because again, regulation tends to favor the large companies who can have armies of lawyers and accountants. But when you're just starting off and trying to create something, and let's say you're coming from a sort of disadvantaged circumstance in the first place, you can't hire all the lawyers you need to comply with government regulation.
All right, we got some strong statements from Facebook, which is always known for its careful tenor. Brian says, for the most part, millennials are myopic. That means nearsighted. They're not looking at the full picture here. For example, they consider personal student loan a societal peril, but federal debt is not and is dismissed as being a mere teabagger talking point, despite the fact that cries for student loan reform would likely increase the debt. Also, most do not understand the difference between the debt and the deficit. All right, Mr. Myers, you were an economist, right? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So give us your take. As an economist, you probably have a different point of view than most millennials.
Brought up the debt because even though everyone knows we're $18 trillion in debt, but when we look at entitlement programs such as Social Security and Medicare, the unfunded promises we've made to those programs push the real debt up to over $200 trillion now. And millennials realize this. I talked to a lot of young people when writing the book, and we found that a lot of them view Social Security as just another tax. They don't think they're ever going to get any of it back because they know that Washington has mastered the genius, although it is pretty evil genius game, of promising benefits to current voters and passing off the cost to those who can't vote yet or aren't even born yet. So it is a major problem, and I agree with your reader's comment.
Okay. All right.
All right. So we have 2 minutes left of the program.
Okay. So when it comes to the bunch of the issues, I noticed one thing that didn't come up at all, but is a major talking point for the left, which is the environment. Is that is that an issue at all for millennials?
What about you? What about you, Dom? Is the environment a matter for you to consider? Living here in beautiful Montana?
It definitely is here in Montana, but I grew up in San Francisco, so it's kind of a different issue over there than it is here. But I definitely think that it is an issue because, we might not be able to experience this for very long. So it definitely is something that needs to be brought up and talked about.
Okay.
Well, what about you, Jared?
Well, millennials do care a lot about the environment, but they're less likely to self-identify as environmentalists. And I think that's because they've realized the countless warning. I think the whole U.S. is supposed to be underwater by now, according to Al Gore. So they've seen that this hasn't happened, and the alarming statements made by a lot of self-proclaimed environmentalists have turned them off to that. So while they think that, preserving some of the environment is important, they're not as much conservationists where they just want everything to stay exactly as it was in some set point in time. So they want to be environmental stewards, but not just thwarting progress.
Yeah.
So to keep something at some, randomly decided we need to keep everything how it was in 19.
Jared, we are almost completely out of time. If folks want to get more information about your work, and tell us how to find your book.
You can get Disinherited, How Washington is Betraying America's Young on Amazon, Apple Books, all major book retailers. And all of my work is also posted on economics21.org. So that's economics, then the numbers 21.org.
All right. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us. We really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And you sound a lot older than 24, okay? Thanks a lot. All right. There you go. That's Jared Meyer.
Gravitas.
Thank you. Thanks, dude. Okay. But tomorrow, of course, we've got open phones.
That's right. Open phones. Who knows what we'll talk about?
I know exactly what we're going to talk about.
Oh, do you?
I'm still going to be mad. I am still going to be mad. You guys have a great day and enjoy the sunshine.